the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the Brock v. Mac Legendary Rivals podcast. MacCast. That is not macaroni and cheese. It is McMaster, the university. MacCast number 2 with Hoot, or as you know, as he likes to be called, Todd Huether. How are you, Todd? Looking great, sporting an OBA hat.
Yeah.
So clearly, still involved with the game of baseball. Why don't you give all of your amazing teammates an update on what you're up to these days?
Well, just getting home from a night shift. I'm an RN at Mount Sinai. So it's been challenging, including the pandemic and all the staffing changes that has incurred. I live in Brampton, wife, 2 kids, son and a daughter. Tristan just turned 12 in January, and Ariella will be 10 in May. Sometimes she feels like she's going on 45, though.
That is part, yeah. Like some of us will be able to pass to you our flasks from raising girls. And listen, we'll give you a hall pass if you start seeing things after working a full shift. If you hallucinate and think you see Henry Romanowski in a suit or something, as opposed to a cut off mesh tank top.
Well, and I caught your session with Billy Newton there, and when he finally admitted that he was coming off a night shift, very, very succinct, very, very, very eloquent conversation considering he was coming off a night shift. So
I think for the McMaster ones, I'll keep a scoreboard up that just counts the F-bombs, and Nukes will win. You'll lap the field several times. But Todd, tell me a little bit about where you grew up and life before there was university in the mirror. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Grew up in Whitby. Started playing hockey when I was 10. Started playing baseball when I was 11. And then it gets to the point where, you're 13, 14 years old, and you realize you're not as big as the Primo brothers or the Allison brothers, where, Keith and Wayne ended up in the NHL, Jamie Allison. So you decide maybe you should try something else. So, so baseball became the sport. Played for the team Henry Street High School from 91 through 93, I guess, or 90 through 93. And then started playing rep ball for David Imeson, and when I turned 16, and then played for Ian Hardy for a couple years, 17 and 18, for the Whitby Juniors, and then ended up at McMaster, and played on the team. I ended up being the first base coach on that championship team in '97.
So Todd, talk to me a bit about, Whitby has always been interesting. So, have a little rivalry with, from where I am, Oshawa. So, we always think of ourselves as the drunk mullet-toting uncle or a crazy uncle that is beside Whitby. And what was life like at Henry Street High School? So I assume, we all knew because I was at high school during that same time. That's a lot where the Oshawa Generals, where you would have played on a baseball team that probably had several Generals playing on
Mm-hmm.
it. Lindros, I know we knocked out
Mm-hmm.
a team that had Lindros and Scaldi and Jamie
Yeah,
Waters.
Jared Scaldi, Ken Shepard, Sean Brown. So that first year I played on the Henry Street team was the same year the Jennies won the Memorial Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So those guys had kind of tried out for the team. I don't remember all the details. And so you had Eric Lindros, Sean Brown, Jared Scaldi. I can't remember if Ken Shepard was on that team or not. So the Jennies win the Memorial Cup. We make a run. We win LASA. And you've never seen so many people at a high school baseball game in Canada. Just because Eric Lindros was there. We're at Iroquois Park. There must have been 2,000 people there. I kid you not. And I'm just like looking around like, wow, like this guy plays hockey. I mean, Eric was a decent player, but I'm sure he wasn't nearly the baseball player that he was as a hockey player.
I can say this with absolute confidence because I pitched against him. His hands were a little slow if he threw one over his belt. He couldn't catch up to fastballs.
Yeah,
he could throw them pretty good. But interesting dynamic for sure to have that many people at a high school game. What was McMaster your first choice in terms of university, or do you remember your choices and what led you to choose Mac?
Yeah, so I don't know if they still have the same procedures these days in high school as they did back then, but so you chose 3 schools to apply to. So I chose McMaster was my first choice. I remember applying to Queens and U of T. Got into all 3, but you're graduating high school, you want to spread your wings a little bit. So thought, Hamilton, McMaster's, far enough away, but the school a little bit smaller than the other 2. So I was always leaning towards McMaster. And then interestingly enough, so I played baseball with Jason Gwindon for a year in '92 in Whitby, and then in that summer of '93. I had gotten my acceptance to Mac, but hadn't chosen which residence I wanted to live in yet. And Jason showed up at our game at that cow pasture in Pickering at Brock and Finch, where the mound was like 3 feet high.
Yeah, I know
and
that mound well.
Yeah, so he shows up to that game, and he says, "Well, I've been in like a residence assistant in Woodstock Hall." He said, "I'm going to be VP, one of the VPs in Woodstock Hall next year." So he said, "Apply to be in Woodstock Hall." So long story short, applied to be a resident of Woodstock Hall, and the rest is history, so to speak, I suppose.
Well, Woodstock is rather infamous for being a bit of a party central and hosting Purple Jesus parties and the rest of it. So tell me a little bit about your early experiences at Woodstock Hall.
Yeah, lots of parties. The floor crawl with the Purple Jesus was a big one. And I mean, apparently, from seeing some of the correspondence go between the guys in response to the alumni game you're organizing, it's people always talking about Woodstock Hall, the Purple Jesus.
You guys are planning on having a Purple Jesus bonding experience before we play?
Yeah, I guess I don't know.
Better. So, so Jason recruits you, and was there any discussion while he's convincing you to join Party Central at Woodstock? Is there any discussion about a baseball team at this point?
Yeah, so it was I guess it would have been the fall of '92. So we had just finished playing, and I don't remember how he got in touch with me. I don't think email had really taken hold yet, and definitely no cell phones. But he had invited me to go play in Guelph for Mac. I was still in high school, in grade 13. And he says, "Come, we're gonna play an exhibition. A bunch of guys from Mac, and then another guy named Gene Rainey from York, who played shortstop with us in Whitby Juniors." He said, "Meet up with him at York, and he can give you a ride to Guelph." So I remember my dad giving me a ride to York University, and I was sure Jason said, Gene lives in McLaughlin Hall. He's going to meet you at 7 a.m. and give you a ride to Guelph. So sure enough, I can't find him. Going on checking other residences, looking for buzzer codes, whatever. So it's 7:30, 7:45. My dad's well, he said, drive me home, and then you're more than welcome to take the van and go see if you can find them in Guelph. Right? So I don't have any details, because I was just supposed to get a ride with Gene Rainey. So there I am driving all over Guelph. I spent 2 hours looking for this diamond, asking the locals where, because it wasn't at the main park. So looking all over for the place for this diamond where they're playing. And finally, 3 o'clock rolls around. I'm just I got to give up. So then I find out later on that they only had 8 guys. And I was supposed to be the 9th player on that team. And I guess Jason decided that the best way to play with that would be no third baseman. So so I understand that Sam Dempster was coaching that Durham College team that they were playing against, and they were just dropping bunts down the third baseline, which didn't go over well with the guys from Mac. But interestingly enough, I played for Ian Hardy for the Whitby Juniors, and I remember Jeff Hardy, his oldest son, mentioning a similar story playing against Dempster, and then Mr. Hardy just kept telling the pitchers, anybody squares or goes to bunt, you just drill them in the numbers.
Oh man, wow!
Yeah.
So you, in effect, are the cause of the very heated Durham College McMaster early rivalry. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's and interesting eligibility rules at this time when you're still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gene Rainey was supposed to give me a ride. He went to York, and I was still in high school at Henry Street in Whitby. So
early days.
No NCAA rules, right?
No, that's for sure. So you get to McMaster, and Jason's now going to formally kind of get this team up and running. Tell me a bit about your relationship with Jason and what his vision and his work meant to getting the McMaster program going. You have lots of memories of that.
So yeah, there might be a couple other guys who would be able to add more but I mean, Jason was the real engine and the motor behind getting the team going. I mean, I think he listed me as the VP of something that first year. Shane Toohey was the VP of something else. Steve McGrail was secretary something or other. But Jason was the real engine and the real motor behind it all. I think about, he sent us to Litson Sports or Dundas Sports or whatever it was down in Dundas to try and get sponsorship and maybe a break on equipment. I just remember that being very, very unfruitful. It was like talking to the owner of that establishment was like talking to a brick wall, right? So baseball in Canada at the university level, when are you going to play? Down in the States, they're playing right now, right? Because in the southern states, they've got the weather for it. But I remember there being one fall. It wasn't 94 and it wasn't 97, but either 95 or 96 was just brutal in terms of weather. I think like the highs were like 5 degrees, and then by the time the night game rolls around, man, you're trying to play and it's 0 or -1. But yeah, Jason was the engine behind it all. Shane too, he'd probably be able to add more to that in terms of detail. But just in terms of how the team got started, I mean, I remember that fall of 93, right? They have all the intramural or rec sports. And Jason put together like a legendary all-star team in terms of the softball tournament. I mean, I remember we were just steamrolling teams in that tournament. I feel like I remember the final on the Sunday. I think the score was like 22-5. And of course the other teams were complaining, but I remember Jason having guys like another guy we played with in Whitby, Darren Johnston. I feel like Tyler Startek was on that team. Jason, of course. So I mean, he basically had all the elite baseball players that he knew of at McMaster all on the intramural softball tournament team.
Nice. Pretty sure that probably would have led to a banning, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not competitive.
And I do remember we didn't play any exhibition games in that fall of 93 that I recall. I do remember practicing behind the Catholic high school. I forget the name of it. It's off Rifle Range Road there. And I remember playing, we were scrimmaging and I was playing center field. And somebody hit a one-hopper to me and the runner was trying to go first to third. And I just let a flyer go. Missed the cutoff man, airmailed it, but I just happened to throw a strike to third base. And I distinctly remember Tyler Startek yelling at the top of his lungs, "Hit the cutoff man."
It's one of those
just
ones
playing for fun.
That's great, Todd. Do you remember, I mean, obviously you would have had a close personal relationship with Jason, so now is probably as good a time as any to kind of deal with, how you felt about what ended up happening to Jason and what his legacy is, and just maybe some of the things that people don't know about how the two of you interacted. Obviously, you knew him prior to and went out of his way to bring you to Mac. So why don't we just give you an open mic in terms of Jason Gwynn?
Well, the first year I played with him was 92 with the Whitby Juniors. And of course, that was after his first year at Mac. So Ian Hardy's brother-in-law, Dave, was the assistant coach and gave me like a full rundown of how good Jason was the year before. Because as we all do, I fell victim to it myself, the Frosh 15 or the Frosh 20. So Jason wasn't at the peak of his powers when I first met him on that 92 team in Whitby. But just a passion for the game. Like I always hear his voice in my head because it was always like, "Hoots, buddy, hoots, buddy." And so I remember him coming to a game that were like pregame, Iroquois Park. He goes out just on the third base side in front of the pitcher's mound and whips out a golf ball and jacks it over the right field fence. And then he's got like a bag of popcorn kernels and he's spitting them out and hitting them. And I'm like, who does that? Right. But then when you think about all the training stuff that kids do nowadays, right, with the thin bats, the light bats, the impact balls that are the size of a golf ball, that kind of stuff. So he was already like he's already thinking ahead to like being a coach, and just like a passion for the game. You could just hear it in his voice when he would talk about it. Like I mentioned that he came to that game in Pickering and convinced me to apply to Woodstock Hall. He was just like, as he's talking to me, he's just sitting there and like he's pumping up Woodstock Hall, but he's also pumping my tires, right? So on that team, those were probably my two best seasons as a player in 92 and 93. Between playing Whitby Juniors and Henry Street High School, lots of at-bats, pre-injury. And he's saying to me, well, like, you hit second all the time on this team. And when Jeremy Harness isn't around, you hit third. So, right, I was never like a confident guy, like always like in the back of your mind, like what more could I have done, right? The bane of being an athlete and feeling like you left something out on the field, right? He's always pumping your tires. And then I remember just talking to him at Mac, talking about how he would set a lineup, right? So we talk about setting a lineup, and then he'd be like, "Oh, we'll put Steve McGrail at the top. He'll be in the hit leadoff, and then you'll hit in the 9 spot. And then when you guys are on base together, it'll be like a double leadoff scenario."
Analytics before there were analytics.
Yeah. And I remember too, like before his time, I just happened to catch one of the MAC playoff games in the OUAs this year. Caught it on the webcam, and I remember just looking at the defensive line, like the way the defensive lineup was, and I'm like, they're playing everybody straight away. I mean, Jason Gwynda had, like, if you were playing, man, you were charting the other players, like you were doing hit charts on the other players, right?
Yeah.
Like looking for tendencies and move guys around. So I mean, he was ahead of his time with that kind of stuff. But just on more of a personal level, so he convinces me to apply to Woodstock Hall. He's the VP, and of course, some of the stories don't age very well, but it's Frosh Week, right? So he really looked out for me, but he also, treated me like a bit of a servant. Not Frosh Week, right? So I remember being out in the field behind the intramural fields. And I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm basically like his coffee table. his drinks resting on my back and whatever else, and I've got to go get him this and go get him that, and I'm like his gopher for the week. But they were playing that one game where you all the first year students are lined up in a circle, right? And they grease up a watermelon, right? So one person's got to pass it over their head, and then the next person's got to pass it under. Well, inevitably somebody drops it, right? And it splits in half. So Jason's like, "Hoots, buddy, run over there, put the watermelon on your head, and run around and high five everybody." Well, after that, everybody knew me as Melonhead Frosh at Woodstock Hall. And I still, like, not that anybody's called me that recently, but I still, like, I ended up doing kinesiology as a second degree at Mac before I graduated. So I did 5 years there. And I still had people walking by me at Mac in my 5th year going, "Hey, Melonhead." So, but he really treated me like, he looked after me. I was like a little, I guess, like a little brother. He was like a big brother to me. Really looked out for me. And really and truly, like, you have those moments where you think about, well, if I had done this or I hadn't done that, how different would your life be? I remember just this past week, hearing on the radio where the radio DJ was talking about the fact that he wanted to go to this like work convention. He worked as a DJ in Chicago before he came to Toronto, and he's like, "Oh, I got to go to Miami. I got to go to this conference for the radio and TV and entertainment industry," and he ended up meeting his wife. So if Jason doesn't convince me to live in Woodstock Hall. I don't meet the guy who lived across the hall from me first year, would be the best man at my wedding. Wouldn't meet the guy who would inevitably or eventually set me up on a blind date with the girl who becomes my wife. So I think about Jason a lot, and he had a profound effect on my life, and I often wonder how different my life would be if I hadn't met him.
Yeah, it's I think those. We've talked a little bit on previous podcasts about sliding doors, how life would be so different if you've chosen one university over another, and these people are kind of like a glue in your life, and when they go through things like a tragedy, in Jason's case, lost him way too early. The impact that they have in people's lives. It's the old saying: the candle that burns half as long burns twice as bright.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that sounds like an awful lot of influence in your life. So tell me about your best man living across the hall from you.
What can I say? So he lived across the hall from me in first year, but we really didn't hang out a ton that year. And then in my second year, I ended up in Woodstock Hall again, and kind of following in Jason Gwynden's footsteps a little bit. He had been as a resident assistant, the title was sports rep. So he was a sports rep in his second year, VP in his third year at Woodstock. So I applied, became the sports rep in my second year there. So Gabor lived across the hall from me in first year, had a single room down on the first floor right by the front door in second year. And ironically, started hanging out more. He was living downstairs on that first floor in that room. So that was like the room where everybody's coming in the door, and it's like, hey, let's go chill. Let's go see what Gabor's doing. It was like party central. But that was also the year that NHL 94 came out for the Nintendo, right? So yeah. There was another friend of ours still lived up on the fourth floor, Andrew, and I swear there was one afternoon, I think it was a weekday, and man, we were in there from noon until 2 a.m, playing that game nonstop. So we eventually, I was on the fence that year, actually. Like, was I gonna, try and apply to be like president or vice president of Woodstock Hall? But between that and trying to continue with the baseball, I chose baseball. Felt like it was going to be too much, so I chose baseball. Moved off campus. Ended up living in a house on Kingsmount Road, just off campus. And then had another friend, Raj, who he lived off campus, off of Ward Avenue. Then when he graduated, he was in IT, so he goes to work for Kraft, and keeps bugging me. He's like, well, there's this girl at Kraft that I know. I should really introduce you. But I had such bad luck with blind dates. And then when I really thought about it, I was like, well, all the people that try and set me up on blind dates are other people's moms. This guy's known me for like 10 years. Maybe I should, I kept twisting my arm. So eventually I broke down, and he ended up introducing me to my wife. And like I say, if it wasn't for Jason Gwynden, I never would have met those guys.
That's super cool, Todd. We'll get into more of the influence of your family and your wife a little bit. We'll go back a little bit now. So tell me about your McMaster baseball experience, because it's tied obviously to an injury that might be worth bringing up at this point.
Yeah. So probably an example of nepotism at its finest. being on the team because I know Jason Gwindon. At that point, I didn't have the talent, but Jason knew me from that 1 year in '92. And like I say, that was when I was 17. That and my year 18 for Whitby Juniors and Henry Street was probably the best I had played. And I, was a contact hitter. I took a ton of pitches. Like I say, on that Whitby Junior team, I always hit second. And I used to drive Ian Hardy crazy because I would take so many pitches. He would actually flash me the hit and run sign with nobody on base sometimes because I took so many pitches. So like I say, 93, we had a few practices, never actually played any games. Jason got the team up and running in 94, but I broke my ankle in February of 94. It was a good one. If you look down at my foot, you would have thought I broke my tibia, but I didn't. But of course, 3 screws. And it probably it had more of an effect on me mentally than actually physically. Why I never really recovered from that injury and got rehabilitated to the point where I could play the way I had before. So,
Todd, how'd you break it?
So we were just playing road hockey behind Head and Hall. So, the stupid thing is Jason had put together a team to play it was the Downstairs John road hockey tournament.
And well, anyone who knows the Downstairs John probably thinks this is
so Jason Gwynn had put that team together. We made the final, and the weather that weekend, it had snowed like a foot. There was a foot of snow, and then that weekend just got like unseasonably warm. So we were playing literally in 8 inches of slush in that tournament. And I remember a guy getting clipped in the face and bleeding all over the place. But that's the only injury I remember. Literally 5 days later on the Friday, it was warm that whole week. All the snow is melted. And I'm taking a break. I'm all studied up for a biology exam. And I slip on one of the paint lines, just trying to cut inside to go to the net. And my left ankle just snaps out from underneath me. Hospital or ambulance ride to the hospital, some laughing gas, and of course, so I've actually got that mask on as they're reducing my ankle and putting a cast on it. And I look up at all the doctors and the nurses and I'm like, wow, this stuff's awesome. You should sell this to university students. So that got a good laugh. And then, so then I have to have surgery on my ankle. I got 3 screws put in it. So then the school year is over and I am going back to Hamilton for the follow-up. And I guess the fellow, the surgical fellow, comes in. He goes, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" So I guess I was being sedated during the surgery, and he was talking to me, and I was obsessing over exams. Like, I got to get back to, I got to study for exams. I got to do exams. Of course, I got the letter that said I didn't have to write in my midterms that winter, but that was a little surreal as well. This guy's like, "Ooh, hey, how are you? How'd your exams go?"
Wow, that's a pretty devastating injury. And did that affect your baseball plans moving forward? Obviously,
yeah, I was, I still love the game and, still wanted to be around it. So, still played on that team in the fall of 94, but instead of being, hitting ninth and fulfilling Jason's dream of that double leadoff batter scenario between me and McGrail, I played some first base. Wasn't very good at it. I was definitely a fish out of water. And I do remember we make that trip to McGill, and it was the second game of that doubleheader on Saturday night. And somebody hit a rocket into center field, and Joe Davis fielded it, and he just threw a laser to home plate. But all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh my God, I got to cut that." So I literally, very athletic, actually, considering my mobility at that point. So I literally run across the front of the pitching mound jump and pirouette and snag the ball, but then it was too late to get the runner at home plate. And rightfully so, Trevor Lawson's playing shortstop. He is losing his mind, and he's yelling at Gwendon, "Why did he cut that throw?"
Just to prove that you could still do it.
Yeah. So a lot of my memories are about things that didn't go so well. But my dad always said, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? So you got to have a sense of humor, right? So I remember StarTech yelling at me when I missed the cutoff man in that scrimmage that we had in the fall of '93. I remember Lawson yelling at me after I cut that throw in that second game against McGill on Saturday night. And then I remember back in high school, I hadn't played a lot of center field, and Ken Szymanski put me in center field. We were playing Eastdale in the LASA final, and Ken Shepard's playing shortstop. And I'm looking around, I'm like, that Kinsman Stadium in Oshawa is cavernous compared to Iroquois Park in Whitby, right? With that angle in center field at Iroquois Park, right? So I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, you got to play deep here. So Ken Shepard's turning around going, why is he playing so deep?
It's easy to get lost in Kinsman, I think.
Yeah.
I love pitching there because, it would take a huge blast for it to go.
Yeah.
And big park, but yeah, it's so you kind of played all over the place. Now you're rehabbing from an injury that likely is, how do you find the balance of school? Because you're into some pretty high test courses and being a baseball player, and you're involved a little bit in residence, and then obviously living off campus, but having a pretty full life. Was it difficult to balance, or did you find it easy? Like
that second year at Mac was a blur.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that second year at Mac was a blur. Between baseball, being a resident assistant. So like I say, that's why I was kind of on the fence as to what I wanted to do in my third year, right? Like I knew with the ankle injury that the peak of my baseball powers were behind me, but I just loved the game too much. Just couldn't give it up at that point. So the following 2 years, I think I had a few at bats. I remember making a couple of circus catches and turning a couple of routine fly balls into circus catches in left field. Do you remember Donnie Graves put me out in right field for one game, and Craig Cooper's playing center field, and somebody just squared one up and just hammered it into right center, and I lost it in the lights, and I'm like standing there like, where is this thing? All of a sudden, Craig Cooper comes out of nowhere, catches it, and buzzes by me. So so I specifically remember, I think we were supposed to play at Bernie Arbor for a game, and there must have been like a double booking or something, and we had to play on one of the smaller diamonds there. And Donnie put me into pinch hit, and it was hitting against a righty, and this guy had a killer bender, and worked him to a full count. And I remember borderline pitch. The ump gave it to me and sent me to first base. I got a walk, but I think it was really strike three on the bottom corner. But after that first year, I didn't play a whole lot, and on that '97 team, I didn't play at all. So I think I'm still listed on the roster, but I was really the first base coach on that team.
Tell me a little bit about Coach John Graves and what Coach Graves brought to the program when you guys brought him on board.
Yeah. So you can tell just like super passionate. What can you say? Like, I don't know if, I don't think we paid him. So he was volunteering his time. That's a lot of time to put in with a competitive team like that. Same thing with Henry Romanowski. He great guy, passionate about the game, knows the game, and that's one of the great things that that you've spearheaded this whole thing with the alumni and with the alumni game and these podcasts is I'm learning stuff I didn't know either. I didn't know Newton and Tui basically had him in a dorm room at Bates Residence and have him sitting on a couple of beer cases while they were interviewing, grilling him about situational hitting and whatnot. So that was fun to learn. But that championship team, most of the guys ordered rings. I was that was my 5th year. It was an extra year I hadn't really planned on. So I was a little strapped for cash. So I do not have a ring, but Donnie Graves offered to lend me the money to purchase a ring from that championship team, but I didn't take him up on it. So it just tells you what kind of guy he is.
That's amazing to hear that, Todd. What was it like finally getting, over the hump? Because on the road to your championship, you knocked off a Brock team that had been a bit of a thorn in the side.
Yeah, you guys had our number. So I specifically remember that being a walk-off. I don't know. It was a 3-gamer, right? And you guys had us. You had us in the first game, and we came back and won the second game, and then that was game 3, right?
Yeah.
At Bernie Arbor. So I remember that being a walk-off win. And I specifically remember, maybe this is my mind playing tricks on me, but I remember Reeson getting mobbed at the plate. But I also remember watching that and think we finally got that monkey off our back, so to speak, because you guys had our number for a couple of years. But at the same time, I was like thinking to myself, as I'm grabbing batting helmets that are getting thrown all over the field, I'm like, we haven't won anything yet. So
it's a pretty intense rivalry between the two schools.
Yeah, no, it certainly was. Sure. Yeah, like there was a lot of emotion. Like I say, you guys definitely had our number for a couple of years there, and that was the hill we had to climb before we put it all together.
It's amazing who their lightning rods are, right? When you talk to a Brock guy, they just couldn't stand Henry and his chatter. When you talk
Paul
to
Dwyer,
or you talk to a McMaster. You talk to a McMaster person, though, and they very much did not appreciate the antics of Matt Fletcher, the catcher. He was a Hamilton guy and is now a police officer that way. Or probably.
I'm pretty sure Billy Newton rubbed a few people the wrong way on your side.
Well,
he was sandpapery.
Well, I think the thing is with Bill, and he had so many ties to the Brock program, so the coaches knew Bill. I had played with Bill. Ted had played with Bill. So we kind of knew that Bill was like a character, like a larger than life character, but a competitor, very intense competitor. And we were the same, right? Like the reality is, the more you pull back the curtain after 30 years, you realize how much more we are alike than we were different. At the end of the day, you couldn't ask for more different places than McMaster and Brock, right? At that time, McMaster, very prestigious, heavy in big med school attached to it, lots of doctors. Brock, academically was what every newer university was like. Having to find its way, get innovative in the programs it offered. It didn't have a med school. It was mostly a teachers for a lot of people that wanted to go into teaching. And campuses are different. The McMaster campus is historical and looks like something you'd see in a typical Hollywood movie, and Brock is way more modern, glass, architecture, and stuffed away on the top of a hill. And so, you couldn't ask for more, and now that you've kind of opened up, this camp, you've got a Whitby element that's heavy in the McMaster program, and you have an Oshawa element that's heavy in the Brock program. So, it would seem on the surface that you couldn't, you've got two complete opposites, but the reality is, when you pull back the stories and you find out about how you guys had to fundraise, or your t-shirts,
or just pay for everything ourselves.
pay for everything yourselves. The way that you guys interviewed Don Graves on a couple of cases of beer, probably with the smell of beer overpowering him. When we first interviewed Mike McRae, it was in a pub called the London Arms in the bottom of the Penn Center. So, there are lots of common things. And one of the, a more difficult thing is the programs also have this lace of, what I used to think of as tragedy. I started the Barack program because my brother had died, and I wanted to replicate the U.S. experience I was missing. And then you've got the founder of the McMaster program who tragically, gets killed with a heart coming off of a transport truck while he's touring U.S. schools, and or U.S. ballparks, MLB ballparks. So what you do realize is we were all in the same foxhole, just at different locations, fighting the same pressures, how hard it was to balance school and baseball and practice, and expectations, and life. And
it's a shared experience, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
So that brings me to teammates. Do you get any? This is we'll limit it to a couple, but you got a couple of classic stories of some of your teammates that are top of mind for you?
Yeah, well, I don't want to throw Billy Newton and Craig Cooper under the bus, but I remember we were bar hopping one Saturday night, and those two were always yapping, and I don't know what they were arguing about, but all of a sudden they get into it in front of Burke Science, and I'm thinking this is the last thing we need, right? Like, have campus police roll up, and then having the university brass find out about this, but we're not even a varsity team yet. And we're just trying to get this program on the ground. So I go to break it up. Well, I was like $150 soaking wet back then. And those two just literally picked me up and tossed me. And I maybe exaggerating here, right? But I literally felt like I skidded about 5 feet on my face. So I always joke around that I still have a grass stain on my, very fitting, I have a green hat on, right? So I have a grass stain on my forehead from that. But I won't ever forget that. And the same thing, those two were in Bates residence, and we're talking about who's the best player you've ever played with. We get talking to those guys, and Newton was saying, well, it's Craig, it's Coop. Coop's the best player you've ever played with. So, maybe, ties to Whitby and not willing to let go, but I played with and against Jamie Waters, who ended up at the NBI, right? So I'm like, well, I kind of feel like it's still probably Jamie Waters. Those guys would not let up. They're just like, no, Coop's the best player you've ever played with. I'm like, okay.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Jamie Waters was a teammate of mine at Oshawa, and a great pitcher for sure.
Yeah.
And also a talented hitter. He didn't really see much of the hitting side when I played with him, but I have a hilarious story of Waters and I trying to beat up the catcher for Leaside because we were in a huge brawl during the playoffs. And the funny thing is that the catcher for Leaside was maybe 6'2" or 3", but he was about 250 pounds at that time. And Jamie and I were both probably at that time 175 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, Waters wasn't a big guy, really lean.
So the two of us are like holding onto his arm. We each have an arm, and we've pulled his turtleneck over his head, and we're trying to punch. This guy just shakes us off, and at that point, I think Jamie and I looked at each other and we thought, "Oh my God, we're dead." But there was thankfully our center fielder came and knocked that big, huge gorilla into the backstop. But Jamie was a great teammate and a great player. So it's there's no shame in nominating Jamie Waters to be.
I actually had 2 at bats against Jamie when he started playing for you guys in Oshawa, and I remember the first at bat. I got him to walk me, and then the second at bat, he looks at me and he smiles. So then I start laughing. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop. I said, stop smiling at me. So I'm laughing. And of course he struck me out.
Oh, it's a small world. So,
yeah.
So you transition more into kind of a coach. Team wins, says a lot about the character of the people involved with the program. And,
mm-hmm.
Despite your screws in your ankle and your permanent grass stain from being tossed, what happens in the immediate aftermath of, how does your McMaster career wrap up, and what comes next for you, after the celebrating of your championship is done?
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, I told you about how I tried to find that diamond in Guelph when Gwynnon invited me to come play with Mac in the fall of '93. I did not make that championship weekend at Brock. Like I say, it was a fifth year at school, short on cash. And I guess I got my wires crossed with everybody, and I was sure we were supposed to meet in front of Hamilton Hall to catch the bus. So I'm sitting there, and I like half an hour later, I'm like, okay, somebody changed the plans and I missed it. So being a little strapped for cash and not having the means to get to St. Catharines on my own, unfortunately, I missed that weekend. But found it on, that whole weekend, I had the sense, like, just a feeling. So like I say, I was at Mac second degree for kinesiology, and I had a class with Sean McGregor, and saw him Monday, and I'm like, so did we win? He's like, yeah, we won. I'm like, okay. So I have the trophy, and of course we have the picture. And like I say, ironically, I'm in the center of that Hall of Fame picture with the gray Mac baseball shirt on, and nobody had less to do with us winning in '97 than me.
Do you make a decision at that point after fifth year? Are you locked into what you're going to do for a career? Is this or do you?
So like I said, I did kinesiology as a second degree. And knew, like, at that point it was going to do something healthcare wise. So I ended up working as a kinesiologist for 6 years. I don't think they're around anymore. It was called ACT Physiotherapy. So then I'm 30. And then Mike Harris's progressive conservative government gets voted out. But before they do so, they change the fee schedule for all the physios and chiropractors. So they basically had their revenues cut in half. So the company I was working for basically laid off all the part-time staff. And so job security wasn't looking very good. I really enjoyed working as a kinesiologist in a physio clinic, but it didn't pay well. So the guy who was doing my job part-time at that clinic, after he got laid off, he went back to school for nursing at U of T because they had a second entry program. So I thought, hey, that sounds like a good idea. So I applied, got in, and here I am 18 years later, working on 11 North at Mount Sinai.
Wow. And was it always a thing? Like, because obviously being involved with frontline medical, you're dealing with people, and had you always had this want to kind of help people, and have you found your career to be rewarding? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I'll tell patients all the time, like, why do you work here? Do you like it? I said, there's good parts and bad parts. I said, my wife hates the shift work. And there's good parts and bad parts to every job, but I get to, when I get home, I know that I've helped some people through some of the most difficult times. And you'd be amazing how rewarding it is. Like, you could have a patient who gives you like the hardest time. They're very particular, but at the end of your shift, you're like, they'll you can hear the gratitude in their voice, and always, well, thank you very much. And that's what keeps you going. It is a tough gig. The night shifts wear you down, especially as you approach 50. But it's the, you get to help people, and people are very thankful. So that's what keeps me going. And my wife keeps telling me I have to pay for stuff. So
it's always a great incentive. Todd, tell me a little bit about what the COVID experience was like. I think,
so it really affected nurses and other healthcare staff, doctors, etc., that worked in ICUs more than anybody else. As it was happening, I remember talking to my son's grade 2 teacher, and she's like, I don't understand why they have to shut everything down. And I really didn't get it at that point. And then about a week later, finally realized that the reason why is because, so on a regular inpatient unit, in some of the outlying hospitals, the patient to nurse ratio can be higher, but at our hospital, I look after 4 patients on days and 6 patients on nights. But in the ICU, it's 1-to-1, right? So if you have a lot of patients who are requiring ICU care because they have COVID, you lose your capacity very quickly. I look back at it, and you could tell that the hospital was ramping up for it. We had a 16-bed ICU, and at one point they got up to 34 beds when they had to surge. So when you think about that, you're running at over 200% capacity, and the nursing roster of the ICU would be probably as big as, say, labor and delivery, because you have to have 1 nurse per patient per shift. So you're looking at, on our regular 16-bed unit, you're looking at 32 nurses a day, right? Whereas on my unit, it's usually nine nurses on days and 5 to 6 on nights. So you're looking at the fact that you need twice as many nurses in the ICU. Now it's 200+% capacity. And you, like someone like myself, you could train me to work in the ICU, but that would take 3 to 6 months. So, and based on the numbers that they sent to us via email, not that I have like hardcore numbers, but especially Delta, the variant that came out before they started offering vaccines, my best guess is that if you got admitted to the hospital with Delta, there was a 75% chance you were going to end up in the ICU. So the real strain came for folks that worked in the ICUs. I was looking after a gentleman who had head and neck reconstruction from cancer. He was only in his 40s. And we were talking, and his wife worked in the ICU at Trillium. And he said, like, she looks like she's aged 10 years in 1 year from looking after patients, COVID patients in the ICU at Trillium. So we were kind of in this weird bubble downtown with Mount Sinai. Like, most of the COVID cases would go to Michael Guerin, Toronto General, St. Mike's, and the Western. So not that it hasn't been difficult, but there were other folks that had a much harder time. But at the same time, it also drove a lot of nurses that were like the baby boomers that were close to retirement. A lot of them took early retirement. And then you have a lot of new nurses who are coming in. And as much as you try and mentor them and be supportive, they're coming into a stressful situation that's stressful at the most routine of times. And now they're coming in where they're dealing with COVID on top of everything else. So then the turnover for new nurses is higher as well. So it's that's been the challenge, that you don't have the bodies to look after patients. So it's when you hear about staffing issues and that's where the stress really comes in, is when you talk about having to work short-staffed all the time, right? So as I say, my favorite thing about nursing is doctors always get to see patients one after the other, but in nursing, everything happens all at the same time.
Well, it sounds, and obviously having a sense of humor is a great coping mechanism. So, being able to kind of have a bit of a laugh is great.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we transition over to something that's maybe, equally filled with laughs, and probably tell me what it's been like being a dad, and your involvement with your kids.
It's being a parent is the best job and the worst job all wrapped into one. Right? And kids are all different, man, and none of them come with a manual. So my little one, she's a firecracker, and she's always has something funny to say. One of the work clerks at work is always asking me, "How's my girl? What did she say this week?" I remember she just started like maybe 2.5, 3, and wanting to be more independent. So there I am trying to help her on with her socks, and she's like, "No, Dada no do, Ariella do." And I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "You can't. You're as old as an old." And I was like, I just got called old as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. I was like, so she's always got something funny to say. And then my son, he when he was young, he was a puker. So when he was a little bit older, but we're still doing some bottle feeding. I remember a couple times I had him upstairs, and in the couch in the sitting room, and there's carpet, and you can just kind of hear the, and I'm like, uh-oh. So I grab him like a football or maybe a rugby ball, and I run out into the hall where at least there's hardwood, and he pukes all over the floor, like everywhere. And you're just trying to clean it, like from in between the planks of the wood floor. And then it happened to me a second time, and I don't know whether I was tired or I was nodding off, and I didn't catch it in time. And this is one of my biggest parenting wins of all time. Couldn't get him out into the hall. The couch is cloth. There's carpet. And I just held him up like this and cupped everything. And I was covered in puke from here down to my knees. But there was none on the, I promise you, there was none on the couch and there was none on the carpet. So all I had to do was hand him off, strip off, throw my clothes in the laundry, and go shower. But I didn't have to clean the carpet or the couch.
That is a unique gift right there.
Yeah.
You were the cutoff man for the puke.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
And are you involved with coaching or extracurriculars with the kids?
So hence the hat. So my sons played 2 years of baseball. So last year in Brampton, so we played in Brampton, and to their credit, they try and make the teams even in rec league. So they do like an evaluation session with all the kids 10 and up. So we go to the evaluation session. Of course, I do shift work, so I send them an email. I'm like, "Hey, can my son do Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night? Because I got to work, and my wife doesn't really do sports." So they're like, "Yeah, no problem. Come to the Wednesday night one." So I take him to the evaluation at Upper Deck here in Brampton, and watch the event. But the convener's going around like, "Oh, we need coaches. And I said, "Well, I'm thinking to myself, well, with the shift work, I said, I could at least help somebody out, right? Like I know the game. And my experience the year before with the parents was that most of the parents were not baseball people and didn't really know that much about the game. I remember I was keeping score for the coach one night, and one of the other dads looks over. He goes, "Why are you writing the K backwards?" I said, because the kid struck out looking instead of swinging. He goes, "Oh, I thought you were just trying to be funny." So I mean, and then my son that year played with a kid who jumped right from rec league to AAA actually. So he's out there pitching. He was mowing everybody down in that league. And all of a sudden his mom says, "Adrian, forget about the changeup. Just throw the number one." And I look over, I'm like, he's throwing changeups in rec league. So I said, is it a straight change or is it a split? She's go, "I don't know." So like I say, we're at this evaluation, the commuter's going around, and I didn't cave while I was there, but I go home and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll sign up to be an assistant coach. So sure enough, they're like, okay, you've been accepted. And I said, well, I emailed them. I said, I can't be a head coach because of the shift work. I'll miss like half the games, but I said I can help somebody out. So then sure enough, they sent out a list with the coaches, and there's 7 head coaches, and the 8th team doesn't have a head coach, and I'm an assistant coach with another guy. So I'm like, oh, I'll be the head coach so you guys can find somebody. Of course, they never found anybody. I missed half the games. And there was one night where neither myself or the other coach, who also did shift work, he did road construction, couldn't make it. So there's my wife. I did the lineup, gave the lineup to my wife. She goes to the game, and they won. And that was the only game we won all year. So guess who never hears the end of it? Who has the best coaching record in the house?
That is so good.
Yeah.
On 900 levels. So let me ask you another question. It's I think a good one. It's been about 30, 25 in your case maybe. 25 to 30 years since you've seen a lot of. Do you stay in contact with a lot of your old McMaster teammates, or is that life gets?
Yeah, no. It like I say, I have friends from Mac, but not a lot of the guys from the ball team. Like I say, I do message Billy Newton from time to time. Shane Toohey actually was working for a fitness and a rehab supply company. So we did have some interactions while I was working at that physio clinic in Pickering, because he was doing sales in that area. But I haven't seen him in probably 20 years. Billy, I actually ran into it. My father had passed in August of 2001. Interestingly enough, again, I grew up with Billy's wife, Lisa. We lived on the same street, so we went to elementary school and high school together, and then she, of course, went to McMaster as well. So that's where my worlds meet. It's always been a little surreal for me that Billy met Lisa and married her. But I ran into them at the Devil's Martini in Toronto, of all places, not long after my dad had passed. So one of my most vivid memories of Billy is running into him at the Devil's Martini and him offering his condolences and giving me a big hug at the Devil's Martini. But the one guy I do keep in touch with is Steve McGrail. Like I say, his wife lived next door to me in our first year at Woodstock Hall. He lived on the 5th floor. We lived on the 4th floor. And then when we moved off campus, actually, we lived side by side. I lived at 33 Kingsmount. He lived at 35. So we were kind of like peas and carrots for the 3 years we played Mac ball together. So we keep in touch. He kept me sane while I was coaching my son's baseball team last year, through emails and messages and whatnot, because I actually got roped into doing a marketing thing for the OBA through Brampton Minor Ball. So if you want to see another go of me in front of the camera, you can go to their website and go to their YouTube channel, What Coaches Say. I hope I'm doing a better job on this podcast than I did in that interview.
I think it's safe to say we won't nominate Newts for that because it'll be a nonstop parade of beeps.
Yeah.
And I would say, I say this a little tongue in cheek. Billy's a great guy, but Lisa definitely is the class of that combination right there for
Mhm.
sure. So are there, ex teammates or that you're really looking forward to seeing that you just think, oh, I wonder what that guy is up to these days? We all have probably one or two where you're just kind of like, I have no idea how that person's life has turned out. It's just, you're kind of
Yeah,
like,
I
it
mean
could have gone.
that's been kind of neat to kind of hear from some of the guys. It's kind of hard to piece together what everybody's doing professionally. I know Jeff Aikett, who played on that team as well. I still owe that guy a case of beer.
Okay.
So I forget what year it was. I don't think it was the '97 season, but yapping away in practice. Uh, and getting overconfident, tracking down all the fly balls during BP. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, case of beer to anybody who can hit one over my head. And sure enough, next thing, Jeff Aikett cracks one right over my head, just right on, like right off the tip of my glove. So, but I never paid up, so I still look like I had a case of beer.
Well, I think with interest after 30 years, it's
Yeah, it might be a 3 or 4 kegs.
well, that's great. I really look forward to enforcing that, Todd.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
end of
yeah.
the day, I'll be like, okay, here's the transaction. If you can find 1993 vintage, 50, the
Mm-hmm.
stubbies in
Yeah,
an old dusty case, that'd be great. But yeah, I think that part's great. And maybe to wrap it up, I think it's clear that you've got a life that you've worked hard to kind of get going, and been around the McMaster program a lot. Like, what is it that you want to achieve moving forward, and how do you feel that your McMaster experience is, what has it provided you in terms of, guidance or just influence that you feel in your life every day?
yeah. Well, like I say, Jason Gwindon had a profound effect on my life. My life would be fundamentally different if I had never met him. I most likely never would have met my wife, uh, and who gave me 2 beautiful kids. But I mean, through the whole thing, I think with Mac Ball, I mean, nobody's playing career ends the way you want it to. Very few go out on top. Like say, you have to forgive me, I'm a Denver Broncos fan, but very few guys go out on top like John Elway winning 2 Super Bowls at the end of your career, right? So, just taught me, like I found myself, just taught me, what's important in life, and taught me how to deal with adversity. And just kind of learn how to reframe things, right? Like, um, you know, you, uh, winning and losing, when it really comes down to it, isn't the be all and end all. I think about all the relationships I've made through baseball, and it's one thing I tried to teach the kids on coaching my son's team, and some of the parents too. Right? It's like, oh, are you gonna go talk to the umpire about that strike call or about that out? But I would tell the parents, I'm like, 20, 30 years down the road, the kids aren't going to remember the wins and losses, especially when they're 10 and 11 years old. But
Oh,
they might make a friend for life. Um,
well,
so
and I would
I
add that.
still talk to, not necessarily like on the phone or in person, but, my brother and I always talk about Jim Taylor, who's an umpire in the Durham region. And we still talk about uh, uh, how scary he was when we were young. But I mean, I still keep in touch with Jim Taylor, another guy, Matt Anderson, who grew up with. worked at IGA with. Sadly, he just recently passed away as well, but offered me a lot of advice and support because he had been a baseball coach through his 20s and 30s. So picking his brain about, being a coach last year, along with Steve McGrail, who has a lot of experience. Like he's a teacher, umpire, baseball coach, has done a lot through charity, through like London Health Sciences. And he, during the pandemic, I believe he wrote a book about one of the kids at his school to raise money for charity. So I mean, there's certain things where, like I say, the things I tend to remember, the things that went wrong, like, because it's funny, right? But I don't I remember that walk-off win against you guys. And I remember winning Lhasa with Henry Street. But I mean, I don't really remember the wins and the losses. I remember the relationships I've made through the years. And that's probably been the most profound thing for me, just learning how to like reframe things, deal with adversity, and then try to sustain the relationships throughout life.
It'll be fun to, see several of those relationships rekindled. Here's a great question for you. Your kids are a little ways off yet, but when it comes time for them to apply to university, A, would you recommend that they apply at Mac? B, would you ever let them go to Brock?
Well, I will tell you that, so of course, my first two degrees are from McMaster, and then my nursing degree is from U of T. And they did not have set like uniforms at the time as nursing students when I went, but they gave us a patch that said U of T, and I would not sew that U of T patch onto my scrubs. So, I mean, obviously, I'm going to let my kids make their own choices and support them. My son loves cars. My brother-in-law is an engineer with Mercedes-Benz. So I doubt he's going to end up at McMaster or Brock if he wants to do that, something like that. And I don't know what the arts is like at Brock, but my daughter's a bit of an artist, so I don't know where that would take her.
It sounds like Eastern Ontario is in your future. If you think about engineering, I mean, typically that's, there's three schools that come to mind: Queen's and U of T and maybe Waterloo for sure.
Yeah.
And the arts, I think the number one arts university, at least as far as I know, is Trent. And so, but it's just kind of
Peterborough's a nice town, and my mom lives in Lindsay, so there you go.
Yeah, it's so I think it's just fun to ask. I mean, we joke a little bit that all the Brock graduates have a no Mac policy in terms of their kids, but I think that seal's been broken because Doug Lunny's kid is playing at Brock. So
yeah, I heard
the first father son that have crossed the line there.
Yeah.
And so just interesting, and we're really looking forward. It's been a hoot, Todd, literally. And we'll get caught up here down the road and get the wheels in motion for the weekend and stuff. But thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
No, I want to thank you for all your efforts. This must have taken a ton of time to organize all the events and the alumni game and get the ball rolling on something like this. It's been a lot of fun reconnecting with some of the guys and the jabs going back and forth, and some of the stories with Brad Arms and Henry Romanowski, and thinking back to our trip to McGill that first year. Steve McGrail was just giving me the gears the other day. He said, "Oh, we had to stop at every other rest stop so you could eat." So I had developed a bit of a reputation back in the day for having a bit of an appetite. The folks at Woodstock Hall would always joke if they went to the cafeteria with Todd, then you had to take a pillow and a blanket. So it's been a lot of fun rekindling some memories, and now it's written in stone, so to speak, that I owe Jeff Aiken a case of beer.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate it. You take care.
Well, the smell of grass.